and candidate in the Louisiana State Senate 12th District, Britt Gondolfi. And welcome, Britt. Thank you for coming to the show. Remember to unmute your mic.
Hi.
And hey, thank you for coming back onto the show. Appreciate you.
I'm so
Um,
thankful to be here. I had the best time ever last time.
that is awesome, and we love to have you. And win or lose, you are always welcome to come back on the show to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And so, how's the campaign been? What have you been up to?
I can't complain, but I will. It's really hard. Running for office is very, very difficult. I definitely, as a first time candidate, underestimated the misery and suffering that is running for office. A lot of it has to do with just the costliness
Mm-hmm.
of the whole process and the way that we organize like political fundraising. But I think I have a chance. Like a lot of people, the positives are that a lot of people have been very positive to the message that the state shouldn't put doctors in jail for providing abortion care services. So a lot of people told me at the beginning that this was going to be a dead in the water strategy for me to just be very open and talking about women's healthcare and reproductive choice and abortion. But I think it's actually helped.
Right, and as we've talked before, and as I said, there's two ways to run in that district because it's on the North Shore. The North Shore is very conservative. The common wisdom is that what you should do is you should run to the right, run to the center. Be more centrist, be more highlight conservative values to get those people to come to you. But the other way of thinking was what you're doing, and maybe it's winning is getting people who may not feel like they have a vote and support on the North Shore to come out and vote by saying, hey, I'm there for you. Come out, register, vote, and then also maybe get those people who are like, wow, this law went too far. This law and this person who is currently representing us supported this law, and this law went way too far, and it did. And you're beating it out there, and what you're saying is you're getting a lot of good feedback from what you're saying, and that's great. It's great to hear that people are rejecting what the law is. And even if at the end of the day the result is you get people start pushing back on the draconianness of the law, that is also a good thing.
Yeah, I just had a lot of women tell me their own personal story. I knew that women were going to say, hey, thank you for speaking openly about your personal experience. Here's my personal story. Because nobody's pro-choice until they gotta be. Because
Right.
it's like, why would you be? You don't know that you're pro-choice until you're in a situation where you're like, oh dang, I really need that choice. People don't fantasize about having tragedy or car accidents or bad things happening. And being pregnant and not being able to be pregnant is kind of like a car accident. You don't like foresee it happening to you, but it does happen to people. So hearing people's personal stories and testimonies, um, and having women tell me that they were thankful that there was someone in the politic that was just going to be open, as it kind of opens the door for other women to be honest about their experiences.
And you're out there, and I mean you're out there. You're gonna be taking the good. You're probably taking some barbs too. I'm sure people are out there, throwing slinging negatives as well. I'm sure, but I'm sure you're used to that. Especially because you used to work in a clinic, right? So I'm sure you dealt with that a lot there too.
If I had $100 for every time someone called me a baby killer, our campaign would be fully funded. We'd be off to the races. We should ask for sponsorship.
Right.
Every for every hateful comment. And that's been interesting to witness, like the hyperbole, the very exaggerated language that people who are fighting to criminalize abortion use. They're equating murdering a child with someone taking a pill weeks after conception. It's
Right.
not the same.
No,
I don't care what you say. This is not equivalent.
not at all.
And so it's been interesting. And I at first was really struggling with the comment section. I'm one of those people that I wake up, I check my phone. I wish I didn't, but I do. And so waking up, checking my phone, seeing someone be like, you're a murderer every day. At the beginning was tough. And then I just started clapping back and saying, this kind of language is dangerous. Like, you are actually, in the way that you're speaking and misconstruing the reality of abortion, you result in people getting hurt. I mean, I worked at a clinic where we had to have security guards. I worked at the clinic at the time where that Dr. Tiller, was murdered in his church. I mean, people are violent,
Mm,
and accusing people of murder when you're advocating for privacy and medical choices being made between women and their doctors, it's intellectually cheap,
right.
and it's a really low blow, and it's not accurate, and it's an over exaggeration, and it's dangerous. And so now I'm having fun in the comment section. I'm like I just I don't care anymore.
Right. I mean,
I
like I got to
that's
a
been fun.
point. It's tough. Yeah, I remember when I was in my early days of debating, choice and autonomy. I was, maybe because being raised up north, maybe I was more likely to be, raised as someone with, believing in choice regardless. But as earlier you get, it's tough to debate the persons. But as you start getting in your wheelhouse and getting your ducks in a row, I guess, and learning how to debate it becomes a lot easier, especially when you start hearing the same things over and over and over again, and they're less creative, and then it's like, okay, well, now I know how to hit this one out of the park, hit that one out of the park, and you know actually start getting impressed when they come up with something new.
Yeah, well, that's why my opponent didn't show up to the WDSU hot seat debate.
Right.
For 2 weeks, Travers Mackel from Channel 6 News, that does the hot seat debates. When we saw Mandy's, the one for the North Shore Sheriff race, got viral. It's a big deal. This is our local news source for politics. And the seated incumbent, who's the second most powerful senator in the Senate, for 2 weeks couldn't respond to schedule a 20 to 30-minute television segment, which is free press for someone that's running. So, I mean, she did that for one or two reasons. One, she doesn't feel like she needs to, or two, she thinks it would hurt her if she did. And I think it can be both. And, so for me, it was like, I was really looking forward to people seeing the contrast between someone who says, if you don't like abortion, we should be providing higher wages, affordable housing, early child care, preschools, better public schools, like make life good for people who do have kids, but you can't jail doctors. Like, I really wanted to see her justify jailing doctors. And I
Right.
really wanted to ask her if she thought that jailing women for having an abortion is constitutional. I don't know that she's a Republican. She cares about the Constitution, that was written, you know, for a different time in a different place. But all that to say, she didn't show up. And the fact that, like we see Jeff Landry, who wants to subpoena women's medical records, who wants to figure out if you said that your period was late in your period tracking app. Like, he's not showing up. So it's so interesting that this political haze of like, we don't defend it anywhere.
Right.
Like, defend it. Like, I jello wrestle you to figure out who's right in this and who's wrong. Like, let people decide. I mean, not really. I'm not going to jello wrestle Beth myself, but you
Right.
get what
And just let the callers know that because of the technology, she won't be able to hear you, so I can't take calls on this. So I'm sorry, but we'll get to your calls afterwards.
um,
Yeah, I can't take the calls at the moment. I mean, I could probably ask questions from the YouTube chat if you people wanted me to, but I can't take calls.
can we do the chat? I'm so sorry, guys.
Yeah,
Should we
if,
have
if
done?
you if you have a question you want me to ask in the chat, I could definitely do that. But I can't take a call. So ask questions in the chat, and if they're reasonable, I'll ask them.
If they're
So
unreasonable, we'll shame you.
yes. Oh Lord. Well, here my favorite one of my favorite conservatives wants to know if you are sworn in on into office, if you win your election, what book will you swear in on?
Oh, wow, that's a beautiful question. I'm gonna really have to pray about it. I'll
Okay.
have to pray
She's
for
gonna pray
sure.
on it. So there you go.
I have to pray on it. One of my favorite religious texts is the Buddhist text, the Dharmapada. Do love the Bible, but there's just some things in there that don't totally jive. It's a big book. Bible's a big book. When you
Mm-hmm.
swear by the Bible, you swear by a lot. And I eat oysters. I break all the old dietary restrictions in the Old Testament. So
Right.
I don't be a hypocrite or
Well, see, if
anything.
I was an observant Jew, which I'm Jewish, but I'm not really observant. I love bacon too much. If I was an observant Jewish person and I won election, I would not be able to swear on the Bible because it would be against my religion to swear on the Bible, which is why when you take the oath of office, you can either swear or affirm that you're going to uphold the Constitution. So you don't have to actually swear on any book; you can affirm. Um,
Could I get a book that's just the red text? Just New Testament, just four gospels, just want the words in red, want everything else taken out.
there you go.
Is that good enough
That
for our
works.
listener? That's what I want to do. I want to strip the Bible down to just the words in red and leave the rest blank, and then I'll swear on that.
All right. I think that's the only serious question so far in the chat.
Oh
There's
wow,
a
oh man.
House Sparks related question. I don't know if you know House Sparks, the comedian, but um, so let's
No,
see. Oh, we do have another. Let's see. Let me see. If you are opposed to the ending of an innocent human life in the womb, then you must also support socialist policies to prevent abortion.
I'm the less than legal candidate. I mean, I'm going to have to discredit that first portion. All differ on when, quote, life begins, and a majority of abortion care services happen by pill 3 to 4 weeks post conception.
Right.
And so women who have a medical abortion, what comes out of their uterus, they see. And if women were horrified by what they saw when they have medical abortions, they would have, we would have heard. I
Well,
mean, I mean, maybe there are women that be disturbed, just for their own moral leanings, but I don't know. You see this whole thing, they just want to immediately dive into this
right.
idea of this is like me killing my 7-year-old.
Right.
It's not. It's just simply not.
Well,
And
I think the hypocritical thing, though, is like that we have lots of socialist things that they support. Like having a police department is socialist, having a fire department is socialist, having a military is socialist. It's taking money from people who can afford it to support everybody. I mean, those things are all socialist things as well, but they don't complain about that. They want us to support those things, but they're not going to look at it that way.
well, let me tell you, and I say this all the time, look at countries that have the lowest rates of abortion. You know what they have that we don't?
Socialized
Universal higher
medicine. Yep.
education, socialized medicine, early child care. They send you home with a nurse. They have people come to your house, visit on you, check on you. If you are a single mother, you're going to get a significant stipend from the government to survive. Like, they help people.
Right.
It's not because they say, I'm going to throw you in jail, doctor, for helping this woman who has to have an abortion because she's broke
Right.
and she's pregnant, you know. It's just such a big decision for the government to make for every single human being. I'm so mad this election season because I really felt like this election, people were going to be like, oh my God, the house is on fire. The state of Louisiana is mandating that every single pregnant woman be forced to give birth no matter what, even when she says she cannot. I thought people were going to be losing their shit. But to be quite honest, like, it has been hard to pull this story like up
Right.
to the surface of this political season. And the voter turnout is astronomically low. The media coverage is, it's a big deal.
Mm.
It's
Well,
very, very.
I think it's unfortunate that Louisiana puts its elections the year before other election, the main congressional elections, because it keeps the election turnout lower, which only helps conservatives. But on the abortion thing, I mean, you're right about you know I've always said liberal policies reduce abortions, conservative policies increase them. When Jeb Bush was governor of Florida, he um, reduced funding to Planned Parenthood, and for the rest of his tenure, the abortion rate went up. When John Hickenlooper was governor of Colorado, they made universal access to contraception, both by pill and IUD, regardless of if you had insurance. Because under the Affordable Care Act, if you had insurance, you could get those things at 100% first dollar. But not everybody had. There was still a gap of people who didn't have insurance. So even those people would have access to pills and IUDs available at no cost. And during the tenure of his term, for the rest of that term, unwanted pregnancies went down, which meant abortions went down. So liberal policies reduce abortions, conservative policies increase abortions and just punish the people who get them. So if conservatives are only about punishing people for their choices, not about actually having an actual effect. Of when I had another radio show way back in the day, I had the head of Planned Parenthood, I think it was, and it was and we all were in agreement that if we could reduce the number of abortions that took place, that would be a great thing, because nobody goes and wants to have one. It's just, but if you have to have one, it should be safe and it should be legal.
Yeah, no one wants to read a positive pregnancy test and say shit.
Exactly.
No young girl is like, when I grow up, I'm going to read my first pregnancy test and cry and throw up.
Right.
Like, that's not the reaction that someone wants to have. And there's a million reasons why someone would have that reaction. And it's either socioeconomic, medical, related to their relationship, or the circumstances of the conception are tragic.
Right.
Tragedy, shitty relationship, horrible medical circumstances, or socioeconomic. The only thing the state could provide any real substantial assistance with is that socioeconomic reason that a woman finds herself in need of an abortion. And nobody should have any other thing to say about the other three. Because if you are in a horrible relationship and you can't co-parent with someone, or if you have a horrific medical condition, or the child has a horrific medical condition, and we don't have universal health care. I watched women in the abortion clinic choose to have what conservatives would call a late-term abortion, because they found out their pregnancy had a medical condition that they were not going to be able to afford. They were not going to be able to afford to give this child a life of dignity. And a lot of those women got pregnant on purpose, and they're having this abortion in part because they cannot economically survive what it will cost to provide care for the condition that child has. So is she the criminal, or is the state that exploits and bankrupts people for having medical conditions that are beyond their control the criminal?
Right.
Because right now we're going to criminalize doctors who would help that woman, as opposed to figuring out how to provide a system of healthcare where women aren't making that economic calculation.
Right.
And so they're just out of their goddamn minds. They've just been using this. It's easy. It sounds good. I'm pro-life. It's just an easy thing to hide behind.
And you can't be pro-life if you support the way that the Louisiana law is worded, because, and I may not have the exact wording down exactly, but the way it's worded is that in Louisiana, which models itself off of the Texas law, is you have to be in imminent danger of having a severe medical issue taking place before you're allowed to terminate the pregnancy. So if you're in imminent danger of having what would be deemed to be a minor, like permanent, like if it's going to be if it's going to be a permanent medical issue that's minor, whatever that means, you can't abort. If you're going to have a major medical issue that's not permanent, you can't have it. If you're going to have and if you know that you're going to have a major medical issue that's going to be permanent, if you let it continue but it's not imminent, you still can't have it. So you're basically forcing the patient to wait until it becomes an emergency and then deal with it then, and then risk it, which is why in Texas you had the case where the woman is suing the state because she actually went into toxic shock because of sepsis, because the way that the law is written is so poorly written that the lawyers in the hospital are like, well, we can't advise her doctors to do this procedure until she's in sepsis, because and the state's like, well, of course they could have done it. Well, no, of course not, because it's not clearly enough, and because this shouldn't be a legal issue. This should be an issue between the patient and their doctor as to what care is good enough for them.
15 years maximum sentencing is a hell of a fucking threat to make against a medical professional that will impede them from doing something they fear will cost them the rest of their lives. Because how long does it take to become a doctor? What, or
Right.
the average age of the doctor has got to be between 30 and 50 years old. So when you say that if you provide abortion care services to someone, you're going away for 15 years potentially, that's the rest of their life.
And the
We're talking
biggest
about putting doctors away for the rest of their adult life because they find a woman and she says, I desperately need to have an abortion. And if they provide that for her, they're going to go to jail.
right,
Who's going to want to practice medicine here? Who's going to want to be a gynecologist here?
right,
A lot of Republican women that I've met that have told me that they resonated with what I was saying were medical professionals. There were women who have been nurses and who have worked in hospitals and who realize the myriad of complexities that happen that require someone to have an abortion, you know? And then for the state or for our legislators to naively respond, well, they just should put these babies up for adoption. You should just put the baby up for adoption.
well, how can they put up the baby up for adoption if they're forced to die to have the baby? It's going to be the state. Right. It's going to be the state exactly. or the widow, the widowed husband.
Naive.
Yeah,
it's cruel and it's naive to say that, oh, you know, every circumstance in which a woman needs an abortion is just simply solved by the fact she could just be pregnant, give birth, and give the baby away. If giving the baby away wasn't a hard enough choice for many women to make, they don't even consider that pregnancy is 9 months.
Right.
Birth is a life-altering, biologically altering, like I'm not the same since I had a child. The right. state is making women give birth and just give it away. Like, what does that mean? That means that they're farming children from poor women.
Right.
That's exactly what it means. And from what I saw at the clinic, and what pisses me off the most about the adoption argument is 30% of the women that have abortions already have kids. So you're telling Sue Joellen, who's pregnant and can't afford another because she's already got 3, to go home and tell her 3 kids, well, mommy's just going to get pregnant, get big, y'all fall in love with this baby, and then when I give birth, I'm sorry, guys, we can't afford it. I have to give your brother or your sister away to someone. It's easier for that woman to go take an abortion pill as soon as she finds out that she's pregnant instead of telling her children that she's going to give away their sibling.
Right.
How does the adoption option really play out? And for those people that are able and capable of putting a child up for adoption, props to you. That's huge. Wow, what a sacrifice. But for the state to force everyone to make that sacrifice, it's no longer a gift. It's slavery. They're enslaving people because the private adoption industry has suffered since Roe v. Wade was overturned. The number of people that put children up into the private adoption system has dramatically dropped since women were able to say, I cannot do this. I do not want to do this. I will take this pill, have a miscarriage, and not be pregnant anymore. You know, people don't talk about the economic incentive to criminalize abortion, but I believe that there is one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sinister and dark and horrible. But we can't expect women who are in poverty, who can't give birth, to be forced to give birth so that other people can become parents. It's
right.
Feels pretty feudal to me, you know. It's given big chattel vibes, like.
Yeah, I mean, big under his eye, Handmaid's Tale type deals. Like,
I haven't even seen it. Don't tell my supporters this, but I haven't read it. I haven't seen it. Having worked at a clinic and being told what it's about, I was like, I can't handle that right now.
Oh, and my wife was just. We started watching it, and my wife was like, I can't handle it. I can't watch this. This is too real. And it is. There's a lot of things where it's just like, yeah, that I could see that happening. just a
It's
couple
happening.
steps away. We're a couple steps away from that, and there are a couple things where it's like, oh, that just happened. Yeah, ew.
They're
Uh,
already trying to build like homes for pregnant women to go,
right.
you know, these crisis pregnancy centers that got this massive tax credit allocation. They're going to have these little centers for women to like come and live and get religiously indoctrinated,
Well,
and
those places piss me off. I mean, there was
we're
like a
going back.
story way back in the day. Like I read in like the Gambit, which is for the listeners who don't live here, one of our local papers, and like this one place just strung this woman along for such a long time. Like, oh yeah, oh we'll help you get the abortion. Oh, we'll help you get the abortion. Oh yeah, and by the time they helped her get by the time it came time to help her get the abortion, it was too late. She couldn't get the abortion, and guess what?
What did they do?
She was forced to then have the kid because they misled and manipulated her.
Yeah.
Another thing that the conservatives lie about, and I finally remembered it had left my brain and finally remembered it, is that they lie about like in stuff about like what the whole heartbeat lie is like. They'll say, oh, 6 to 8 weeks is a heartbeat. No, the human heartbeat in the fetus isn't fully formed until like 20 weeks, and the abortions that take place after 20 weeks is like 0.5% of all abortions. 99.5% of all abortions take place before 20 weeks. When people the only abortions that take place after that are not people who are like, oh, I want to go have an abortion, and I don't want to be a parent. It's people who are in those drastic situations, not even economic drastic situations, but those other ones where the fetus is not going to survive outside the womb, where the parent is where the patient's not going to survive the pregnancy. Those types of situations, and where these laws completely fall apart. Like my position, I take the extreme position of no restrictions. It should only be between the patient and the doctor. But even if you're going to put restrictions on it, it should never be restricted in life and health situations. Never. As long as if the doctor says this is going to kill, trust the doctor. This is going to kill the patient, trust the doctor. Don't just have the doctors just sign off on it. Done. And that's the end of it. And don't force don't make any sort of other tests about it. This is going to kill the patient. Done. End of thing. This pregnancy won't last. Done. Sign off of it. Don't try and legalese it. But they
It's
did.
too complicated to
Yeah.
qualify.
Right.
It's way too complicated to qualify. People or Travers Mack on the WDSU thing was like, I want to ask you about the exception thing. And I'm like, let's go beyond exceptions. Let's just
Right.
go right back to that. This is a right that is enshrined with our right to privacy, our right to bodily autonomy, our right to self-determine. Because if we say we need to start fighting for exceptions, what are we going to do? We're going to make women go to court and prove they've been raped. We're going to make
Right.
women go before a judge. We're going to put it on the public record. Every single woman that experiences a tragedy, what are we going to have? Abortion courts?
Right.
Today on abortion court, Mary Jane must prove why she deserves to have this abortion
Right.
live tonight. Like what's the standard of evidence that's necessary for a woman to prove that she's been raped? So it's too complicated for us to put these kinds of restrictions. And let's talk about the prior restrictions with Roe v. Wade. It was to viability.
Right.
It was 24 weeks and 5 days for an elective abortion, 25 weeks and 6 days for what they called a therapeutic abortion,
Mm-hmm.
which is abortion to save the life of the mother, a fetal anomaly, or a tragic circumstance. There were no third trimester abortions
Right.
anywhere. That's not what was permitted in the case. The case outlined when it was when the viability line is. The issue is that our medical world has been able to move that viability line further back.
Right.
You could have a 20-week-old, 17-week-old, 15-week-old preemie that can survive with all the technology that we have now. So it makes things more complicated for that original standard of, okay, before this. I can't say that I'm not for some moment of deciding. And the reason why you said that 99% of abortions happen before 20 weeks is because genetic testing that gives signals to doctors that lets them know that there is going to be a severe medical situation with the pregnancy, they happen around 16 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the abortions that do happen in those later weeks, it's a medical necessity.
Right.
It's a medical necessity. Elective abortion, what people stereotype as the chick having the abortion is, oh no, I got pregnant. I don't want to be, I want to live my life. Like people have this stereotype of the careless girl that just gets knocked up because she wasn't safe and just doesn't want to take up the responsibility. That's the stereotype. But the reality is that there's millions of stories and millions of reasons, and it's too complicated for us to try to set certain parameters as to what we think is right or wrong.
I
Because
agree.
most people, when they find out they're pregnant and they make that calculation, relationship, money, career, life path, my housing, my circumstances, my children, they factor everything out and they say no, they act immediately. And the second reason why women have late term abortions, besides the medical circumstances, is money. Women end up having abortions later in their pregnancy because Medicaid doesn't cover abortion. Most insurance companies don't cover abortion. And so women are waiting and saving money because there's no resources to cover the cost of that procedure. So for people who could say that an earlier term abortion is more understandable,
Mm-hmm.
why are they not for advocating for that woman to have the financial resources? Because if you can't afford a $750 procedure, how are you going to afford a child?
Right.
I don't know. Thanks for letting me run on that for a while.
Oh, I
You
mean,
got it.
you're the
I'm
candidate,
sorry.
and that's your issue. But I mean, and you did say something about it being a right, and I'm sure there are people. I don't know if I've missed this in the chat or not. But part of the rule, the horribly written ruling, with Dobbs v. Jackson, where they overturned it repeatedly. Alito was like, "There's no right to abortion written in the Constitution," and I'll remind everybody on the video that the Ninth Amendment says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people, i.e., our Supreme Court justice who wrote an opinion in the Constitution about the Constitution doesn't understand their own Constitution because that clearly says that you don't have to enumerate a right for it to be a right protected by the Constitution.
Yeah.
So we have lots of non-enumerated rights, and there you
I
go.
think it is enumerated.
Huh?
I said, I'm one of these, I'm not a lawyer, but I have a political theory that I think the Fourth Amendment enumerates the right to abortion. So hear
Well,
me out.
it might enumerate it in non explicit ways. It might be enumerated in like right to privacy type ways, but you know, it's still not explicitly enumerated. You have a right to an abortion, but it doesn't have to be because if you want to go back to what the founders believed in the enumeration of rights, they didn't think that you should have to enumerate any rights, and that was a whole debate. So, but it goes back to the founders being people wanting to love to cite the founders until it becomes inconvenient to cite the founders. So, and then of course they are old white slaveholding men. So, or mostly slaveholding men, and
Moral epitomes are
yes,
moral icons. I think you're talking
who
about our
considered
moral icons,
three
sir.
fifths of a person
Yeah.
who
I
couldn't
look up,
vote.
I mean, yeah, those are who we're trying to grow up to be like. I'm being sarcastic just in case
I know.
anyone tries to do that.
And then, of course, they argue that we should be
I
text. It's the same people that argue that we should look at laws and be textualists will also argue that we should look at the documents that the Federalist Papers. So you can't do both. But anyway,
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that I'm disappointed in the media and I'm disappointed in the Democratic Party for not being like, there's a problem in Louisiana. Like, if you're trying to turn out a youth vote, if you're trying to turn out a progressive vote, if you're trying to turn out a Democratic vote, if you're trying to turn out a vote for poor people, tell people that the state of Louisiana is forcing people into parenthood when they're saying they can't. Just make people like rip your shirt, run out in the streets, and figure out where your nearest polling place is. But the Democratic Party for the most part, has been like, well, I don't know if you could talk about that much. That's gonna hurt you, and the media is like not screaming that this election is a litmus test for how people feel. And by not letting people know this is an opportunity to clap back against our abortion laws, it's not an issue. People are not really talking about it.
I don't necessarily
But
think I don't necessarily think Katie Bernhardt is trying to turn out the progressive vote either. So
we'll talk about this after the election. Katie, thank you for helping me text my constituents.
That's my personal opinion. It's not the opinion of the candidate or the candidates committee, but that's my
no views expressed in this podcast
are the views of the podcast host and not the views of the candidate. But yes.
Oh my God.
But you have gotten support of the party and the governor, the committees, and the committees supported you, and the governor supported you, right?
Oh, the governor had lunch with them for an hour and a half and asked me if I was ready for the robocalls.
Okay.
I haven't received an endorsement, and no offense to him, I would be shocked if he did. I mean, he's built a lot of his politic around being pro-life, which I tried to convince him on and say, look, I get that you want less women to have abortion, but don't you think our law goes a little far with putting doctors in jail? Like, don't you want to kind of do this through social programs? Like, do we have to use the criminal justice system in Louisiana?
Right.
The most corrupt criminal justice system in the country. The last vestige of chattel slavery exists.
We imprison the most people per capita in the world. Let's put more people in there.
Yeah, let's make them gynecologists. I want more gynecologists at Angola. Said no one ever. Said no one ever. And so, I don't know. It's like, where are the days where someone could be like, well, I'm pro-life, but I ain't gonna tell Deborah what to do with her body. Right. I wouldn't, but I'm not gonna put this doctor in jail for the rest of his life. Like, what happened to that? Where it's like, you could be pro-life, but it was just a choice that you were saying, like, if I got knocked up and circumstances weren't right, I'm going through with it. Like, where did we go from being pro-life, meaning I morally can't have an abortion, it's just against my religion,
right?
I couldn't do it. Why did we have to cross over to, and now you have to have my faith as well?
Well, the Republican Party decided they needed the evangelical vote, and that's when they started doing that. Because I think the evangelicals en masse, I think, supported Jimmy Carter. I think they were all happy to have Jimmy Carter as president. I think they supported him a bunch, and then the Republican Party was like, we need evangelicals, so let's get them all riled up about abortion. And then they were like, okay.
I'm so mad at them because I wish they would have put those people on public housing. You know how effective those assholes would have been if we would have been like, all right, pro-life people, I like what you're doing. You're organized. You're putting judges places, but why don't you guys work on housing?
Right.
Guarantee you, drop those abortion numbers way down. Instant results, new strategy. You want less abortion? Let's eliminate the threat and risk of homelessness and home insecurity.
That's socialism. Oh noes. Making sure people have a place to live is socialism, and we can't do that.
Or you tried to shelter me, but I didn't have a good enough credit score.
Right. Although I've had interesting guests on this show that have made the argument that government subsidies for housing, by paying those government subsidies to landlords, you end up artificially inflating the price of housing, which ends up hurting renters. So you actually end up having a situation that harms more renters than helps the people who are unhoused or who are economically disadvantaged, and we should need a better situation than with more guaranteed housing and less landlords or something like that. I don't know if I'm exactly articulating the point correctly, but
I'm feeling what they're putting down. I'm feeling that.
It was an interesting economic point that I couldn't argue with. I'm not yet sold. It's like I've had arguments where, like, I'm almost there. Like, I agree with the majority of the points that are made. Like, I'm not quite yet with the rent is theft crowd, but most of the arguments that they make are valid about,
I believe that everyone deserves to have a home that is a forever investment for them.
right.
Making other people pay your mortgage because you have a better credit score than
Mm-hmm.
them in the monopoly American game is not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily anything to
Right.
like be ho bragging about,
Right.
you know,
I think there
because
are people who
homeownership is
do.
the American dream and you
Right.
deserve, like, if you're paying rent, why aren't you purchasing a home? Well, it's economic disparities.
Right.
You know, it's credit, it's debt, you know, it's not that the landlord is necessarily smarter and more business savvy and more deserving than the renter. If the renter could be the owner, they would be. They
Right.
literally can't.
Right. My
Why?
I mean, my mortgage payment right now is for a larger house is less than what somebody pays for rent for a much smaller place, although I don't know what that will be next year after my citizens goes up, but that's a whole other story. Um ugh. but the but I mean, there are situations where there are people who do choose to rent, and that's fine. If you have the
Renting.
means to buy and you choose to rent, that's fine. If you have the There are people who are like traveling nurses who need to rent, and that's fine. There's definitely
Yeah.
a market for rent, but there shouldn't. We also have so many unoccupied dwellings that could house every unhoused person that it's we've definitely unsaturated the market, I should say, by so many houses that are not being put in the market that we've artificially created a shortage, and as such, or scarcity, that it makes the prices too high for people to be able to afford it, and it's ridiculous.
Airbnb in New Orleans, we're talking to you, you assholes. Can we hear? The short-term rental catastrophe. I mean, people used to just stay
Right.
at a bed and breakfast or stay in a hotel, but now we have people from New York and California purchasing cute shotgun houses and they're running a business. And we have people that are lifetime Louisianians, born and raised, go back generations, can't afford a house
Right.
here.
It's
It's
like the
like,
idea of
yeah, right.
Airbnb should have been like, hey, I live in New Orleans. I want to go to Disney for Mardi Gras, so I'm going to rent my house for Mardi Gras and make some money so I can pay for my Disney trip. Like,
Brilliant. Brilliant. We
great
love that.
idea. But
I love Airbnb when you live in the house.
right, that should be what it was, and then it became, I'm going to be an out-of-state developer, buy 12 houses and gentrify the entire neighborhood and throw all the marginalized people away. Like, that's what it became. Like when it started off as being, hey, I'm going to go to work, but if I'm going to work, I might as well pick up a couple people on the way to work and make some money on the way back and forth to work. And then it became, well, I see an opportunity to make a whole bunch of money, so I'm gonna make a whole bunch of money. And then they started cutting driver benefits, and that's when I stopped driving. I literally stopped driving a month before it became really bad for drivers in New Orleans. Like,
What happened?
they cut the rates. They did things like, we used to get like if a rider paid like $10 on a ride, like, and then plus like whatever booking fee there was that covered like insurance and stuff like that, like, I would get like $8. Like, if whatever the rider played, I would get like 80% of it. They changed it to like a rate card instead, so what the rider paid, what the driver paid was completely different. And then they changed how surge worked. So there were situations where like a driver might get paid like $20, but the passenger could have paid like 60 or something, and like Uber was taking so much more money. It was even worse with Lyft, and I was just like, and it got really bad. Like, I drove in, like, I stopped driving full time. Like, I picked up a full time job. That's why I was doing it between work, between gigs. And it was actually great because I was able to tell anybody I was interviewing with. They were like, well, why haven't you worked as a software developer in the last 2 years? I was like, well, I'm making good money with Uber and Lyft, so I don't have to settle for a lowball offer. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we can't lowball you then. So I was able to get a good salary. And then it ended up happening that as soon as I got the next job, they started changing their policies. And the only time I've driven Uber since was, they said, hey, you haven't driven in a while, here's a good bonus. I'm like, I'll take that bonus, and then I stop driving again.
Why are they gonna make it so hard for workers? It's like if you can't see the inextricable, like
Right,
the battle between those who exploit and those who work and get exploited.
right.
Like,
Well, it's always a constant battle between the people that work and the people who are the employers, and it's always a constant struggle, and that's why you need unions. But everyone's always fighting unions, and it's like I liken the need for unions like the need for the levees in New Orleans. You know, people will argue, well, we don't need unions anymore because unions fought for all these things that we have, so why do we need unions anymore? Well, the
good.
Mississippi River hasn't flooded New Orleans in the last however many years, so does that mean we can take down the levees now? No. We still need the levees because they're preventing the river from flooding the city. So if we take away the unions, the businesses are going to then continue to try and do the same BS they tried to do beforehand. So they don't understand that.
What are we gonna do if Jeff Landry wins?
I don't know.
Is that really, are people really thinking that that's going to happen? Can we talk about when the levees broke, like when democracy broke? Like, do they realize it's going to be like a right wing fascist Saudi regime here? Like,
It's
do they realize?
I don't understand how was it what was the campaign contribution he got? That's now I'm blanking on it. There was some campaign contribution he got that was terrible. Um oh, now I'm blanking on it.
Mm.
I'm blanking on it because I've been too busy dealing with the campaign contributions that have been obtained in the District 91 race for the House race, but that's a whole different other
Oh,
story.
oh, 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 whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's talk about it.
You want to talk about District 91 with Landry?
We're talking about the Madison O'Malley telenovela Democratic Party catfight
Yes.
of the century, the
Yes.
betrayal, the
Yes.
fucking tragedy and betrayal, the mystery of who is Madison O'Malley and why is she being used as an operative to take out one of our most fantastic House representatives who would have just automatically gotten the seat, and all the money that's going to support Mandy, I'm sorry, support Madison ousting Mandy
Right.
could be used to actually unseat Republicans.
Right.
What the hell? What the hell? And look, I met Madison. She seemed like a very nice lady. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
also like, why the hell? Look, I live up in here. This is my little district right here. When
Mm-hmm.
I was deciding to run for office, I was like, well, let me look at a House seat because Senate's a little,
Right.
and I realized, well, I'd be running against Robbie Carter. Robbie Carter's a Democrat and a good one, and an old white boy who's a little bit woke. And so I'm not going to run against Robbie Carter because I'm not trying to take down the few players that we have who are doing the right thing.
Right.
And I don't have respect for political establishment. I just really wanted to fight for women's choice. And Beth Mizell was the more appropriate person for me to go against. So I want to ask Madison O'Malley, is there someone else you could have used your fucking white girl pizzazz against besides Mandy? Is there
Right.
someone else that would have been a more appropriate target for you to take out of their seat? Because if you want to run for office, bitch, I support you.
Right.
Go. Fucking run. But her, you want to run against her? Why?
Right. But that's the thing.
Why?
Like we could. There's so many districts where Republicans are running unopposed that could have had Democratic candidates, and we've discussed this Monday. Even if the Democrats wouldn't have won in those districts, running a Democrat in those districts would have enabled those Democrats to help get out the Democratic vote in those districts, which would have helped statewide Democrats win or have a better chance of winning. So
Literally makes no sense. It
none
makes
whatsoever.
no sense to me. It makes no sense to me. It feels so backstab.
Yeah. Well, some people are mad that for a few months that Mandy Landry left the party because she was felt that she could do the same thing as an independent person as a Democratic person. I mean, they must be
Yeah.
really mad at me because I was an independent voter for years because I was mad that the Democratic Party endorsed unrepentant convicted felon Edwin Edwards for Congress. And, well, I decided to come back into the fold because I wanted to vote in the Democratic primary in 2020. So be it. So that's why I did it, because there's only two reasons you have to be there's only three reasons you want to be a Democrat in Louisiana. If you want to vote in the primaries, if you want to serve on the parish executive or state central committee, or if you want, I guess, to be a Democrat elected official as a Democrat. Those three reasons. Otherwise, you can be an independent voter and still vote however you want, because we don't have closed primaries except for in the presidential primaries. So
I just don't understand. So what do the reports say? Tell me the reports.
like, what do you mean, like the?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, where'd she get her money from? I don't have time to look at
See,
this, but
I
tell
don't
me.
even know. I mean, I think one of the articles that I read, like, that gave kind of like the full background and everything, says that she says that it was like an inheritance, like that she inherited the money that she loaned herself.
Well, run against a Republican, darling.
Right. Like, I don't like
My cat keeps wanting to come in and out. I'm sorry
that's
for the.
fine. I have mine also has came in and out. I was trying to. I thought one of my kids was coming in, and I was just like waving back, and turned out it was just my cat.
Patty's podcasting right now.
Right.
Back.
Because I was like, actually, I'm gonna do something a second.
Maybe Madison doesn't know that there are Republicans controlling Louisiana, that we need to be running beautiful, attractive, intelligent, charismatic, hot young white women against. I mean,
Uh,
if God dealt you that card, you have a responsibility to bring progressive politics to Louisiana. She's doing great. She's walking, her infographics are all cohesive. She's got her signs out there. Madison O'Malley is a very hardworking candidate, regardless of
right,
whether or not you love her or hate her for what she's done. I'm just mad that she didn't take all that pizzazz and put it against the Republicans that
right,
are dragging our state to the dark ages.
right.
Like, she's kind of just picked the wrong fight.
Yeah, I don't understand why. Like, there's a like I was considering running for the state central committee, and but I talked to a friend of mine and found out that the person I don't like who the person who is currently sitting in there supported, and so I was going to challenge, but there is already somebody in my district challenging, and so I'm like, well, I don't have to do that. I don't have to be the one that challenges. So no reason to make that fight because somebody else is making that fight. I don't need to. I can let somebody else do that and support that person or do something else. Like, there's no need to fight at a good incumbent. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And the only reason that I would think that I don't understand why somebody would loan, like in O'Malley's case, $137,000 to her own campaign to a job that's over the next 4 years is only going to pay as what, 80 at the most, 70 at the most, maybe over the next 4 years, is because maybe she's expecting, if she does win, to get campaign contributions to pay that off, and maybe the campaign contributions that she is going to get might not be campaign contributions that she does want people to see before the election. I don't know. It's an like, I don't know. I hope Mandy does win because I mean she's done good work already. But
She's feeling.
what
I said, how is she feeling?
she on Monday she says she feels good about it. Like, she feels that the numbers are
Feels
good.
good.
But you know, we'll
We're
see.
rooting for her. I'm rooting for her. No offense, Madison. I
Right.
just
We'll see
wish you
Saturday.
could.
We'll see Saturday, of course. But the you know, my theory on that is my theory as to why any candidate puts that much money up against to loan themselves
It's
would
not their own money.
would be that either it's not their own money or they are anticipating contributions after the fact and they just don't want to and they have maybe some promises of contributions after the fact, if they do in fact win. So am I right? Am I wrong? We'll see. We can only see if that happens.
These are really good theories, though.
You know, unfortunately I tend to be right more often than I'd like to
Okay.
be. Like, I was in 2016. I was right that if Donald Trump won, he would name 3 Supreme Court justices, and everyone called me crazy. He was like, "There's no way that Donald Trump's going to name 3 Supreme Court justices." And once he named his third, I was like, "I'm like, I'm 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 right too much
Battery, bro.
to only have 750 YouTube subscribers. I should
And
have
in a
hmm?
Metairie,
What?
Metairie Supreme Court, a Metairie Supreme
Yes,
Court.
yes. I even said it was going to be her. I even said it was going to be her. No, it's not going to be. I was like, it's going to be
You're
Amy
the
Coney Barrett.
unsung liberal Nostradamus of YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. But I can't get anything to hit. Even my Hamilton parody I thought was going to hit and didn't hit.
You just keep on saying in there. The 750 people who appreciate your show appreciate
Yes.
you,
So,
and it matters.
well, I try. So,
You
and
do.
and
There is
we all
this
and we
try.
all appreciate you and Mandy and all the other hardworking progressives that are trying to do the right thing for our state as well. Um,
Stir shit, get people pissed enough to vote. It
yes.
sounds like it could be easy, but it's seeming to be more hard than
Oh, my
that.
my first run for office was hard too. I mean, I was it was the first congressional district. I ran all up on the North Shore, and it was North Shore, Metairie, Kenner, some of the West Bank. Like it was very quite gerrymandered. There was a there was a district like in uptown New Orleans where there was 4 corners of an intersection, and like two of the corners, like these 2 corners connected with the intersection and the other 2 corners connected across the river. That's how badly gerrymandered that district was back then. I'm sure it is still very, very badly gerrymandered, but it was crazy. I went to that corner just to be. I needed to take a picture. I don't know if I still have the picture, but I needed to take the picture of this is the district. This isn't. It was crazy.
It was that complicated.
Yeah, way overly complicated because of gerrymandering. They need to pack because they have to pack all of the black voters into one district so they could disenfranchise them and take away their say in Congress. Because there should be
The vote
two
was really low.
because there should be 2 districts that represent black people in Louisiana, and there's only one. And they finally solved that problem in Alabama, and hopefully now they'll be forced to solve that problem in Louisiana too with the Supreme Court ruling. So
It's wild.
that's
We
crazy.
are we waste so much time fighting against what would be just the obvious right thing to do.
Yep.
It's hard not to get resentful. I'm starting to eat a sandwich on the podcast.
No, it's fine. I drink. You
All
can
this
eat.
it's made me a little peckish. A little peckish. Um, well, dang, I'm glad that Mandy's hanging in there. It's just
and I
you
want
saw the
and I
WC
wanted to
thing, right?
come to your thing on Monday, but I had to prep for my podcast. So because now I'm doing Mondays and Wednesdays. So
That's great.
but we'll definitely have to hang out one time soon after the election's over with. Once you are hopefully preparing for your new seat, but regardless.
Look, I give it to God. Whatever happens, happens. I've accepted that if we're not able to turn out the votes that we need, it's not because my position is the minority position. It's because a majority of people aren't voting. And not to make any excuses for me potentially not being successful, but at the end of the day, voter turnout is historically low in Louisiana, and this election is looking like terrifyingly low. If we're low, this election's real low. Like
Right.
there are 60,000 people that have yet to vote, and they only have Saturday.
Right.
60,000 in my district.
And how many people are
20,000,
how many people are in your district?
120,000,
Wow.
but only about 70, 80,000 are registered to vote. Like I think let me get you some numbers
Okay.
from my women's diary. Um, yeah, the total right now is like 35,000, something like 37,000 total. So you're looking at like 100,000 eligible voters, right?
Mm-hmm.
we're missing 60 of them.
Wow.
Crazy. That's crazy. So it ain't my fault.
Uh, well, hopefully you got some more to turn out by being energetic and out there and getting the people excited about yourself and are there any other issues that you want to talk about, or any other things you want to let the listeners know about before you head off? And I know you probably have to take care of the kiddo, or
I do. I do. I just want to tell everybody to tell everyone to vote. I don't even care if you're not voting for me. Just please, let's vote. Like, now that I'm kind of bearing witness to this political process as a candidate and realizing the insanity of so few people deciding the legislators that make the rules for everyone, I'm like, well, shit. It would feel less oppressive if I knew that the people we were getting were the majority choice.
right?
But it's just the minority that's showing up. And so vote. Tell everyone to vote. Be annoying. Be one of those people that other people say, God, I wish Dan would stop telling people to vote all the damn time. It's annoying. It's like, well, if it gets people to vote, then it's
Be
worth it.
annoying. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. And as soon as this uploads, I'll get this to you, and you can share it far and wide. And
Roger that.
good luck on Saturday. And I'll be watching the results. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. And we'll get together soon.
Are you going to be streaming? Are you podcasting, watching the results?
I haven't made a decision yet, but maybe I will. Well, maybe I might.
Do
We'll
it.
see.
You'll be the person I watch. I'll watch you.
Okay.
I'll watch the results.
Great. Sounds good. All
All
right.
right. I'll see you.
Have
Take
a
care.
good one. Bye bye.
Bye.